Thank you. Let me start by thanking you for this very kind invitation, and also to thank Elijah Abbas for the efforts he has made to get me here. Over the last year, I've been twice to the United States of America. On one of the occasions, Elijah Abbas came and invited me, I think I'll hold it closer to my mouth, and invited me to visit the mosque. Unfortunately, they had packed my program so tight, that it was impossible to do so. And so I promised him, I said, look, this is not going to be the last time I'm coming to the United States. And that if I come to the United States again, I promised him that I will come and meet our brothers here in the mosque. So when I came on this trip for the book launch, I came again one more time, but I came just to Washington and went back. I didn't get to New York. So when I came on this visit to launch my book, he was one of the first people who came to me at the hotel. At that time, we were continuing to Washington, and then on to Houston, and then to LA. And so he said that he's coming to remind me about the promise I made. And so I was actually supposed to leave today. My flight was today. And so I asked our protocol officer to shift it to tomorrow, so that I have the opportunity to... Atta Mills! I bring you greetings from Ghana, from our brothers and sisters, and to say that things are going okay. I came to launch the book, my first book, and I recommend it to all of you. Read it, and I guess it'll give you a greater insight into some of the history of our country and the history of our continent. It's a book I've been working on for quite a while, and it's published by Bloomsbury. I had a contract with Bloomsbury. They accepted to be the publishers. And so in the contract, I was supposed to come for the book launch and do... I was supposed to come for the book launch and also do a promotional tour for the book. So we did an event at the Shombe on the 10th, and several of you had the opportunity to be there. We continued to Washington and had another very successful event there. We're also in Houston and then also in LA. I arrived back here yesterday, and I'll be continuing to Ghana tomorrow. Everything is going well, fairly well back home, and we are in an election year, and so naturally the political temperature is rising gradually. There have been a few issues that have come up, but all in all, we've had a successful registration exercise. We're waiting for the Electoral Commission to exhibit the voters register, and then I'm sure that after that, the various parties will launch their campaigns officially. But campaigning is going on in most of the constituencies. It's been 4 years under President Yankasa Masjid, and I would say that it's been a phenomenal 4 years. This government has done very well. This government has done very well in the last 4 years. We took over a situation where we had some challenges with the economy. And so when we took over, the first priority was to stabilize the economy. So for the first 2 years, we had to implement an austerity budget. We had to cut expenditure in order to bring the deficit down. I'm sure you, because of the financial crisis that's going on, you understand all these things about deficits and all that. We had a deficit that was put at about 15%. At the time we're campaigning, we're told the deficit was 9%. It's when we won power and we took over, and the World Bank said, oh, we just got the latest figures from government. And the figure shows about 15%, not 9%. But if you take into stock the arrears and the pipeline, payments in the pipeline, the deficit was closer to 22%. Now, when you talk about deficit in that regard, you're talking about deficit to GDP. And so take 22% of your overall gross domestic product as a deficit, and so we had to do everything to bring the deficit down. What a deficit means is that you're spending far more than you're earning, and you can just put it in the sense of your family budget. If you're earning $1,000, a month, and you're spending say $1,500 every month, then it means that 500 is going to keep accumulating and create a deficit for you. So we needed to reduce the deficit. So we cut down expenditure, and then we put in instruments to try and raise revenue. And so over the first year and second year, we saw a reasonable stabilization of the economy. Following that, we started to roll out the various programs that government had promised during the campaigning. We not only rolled out our own programs, but we continued programs that the previous government had started, because that has been one of the banes of African politics, that a new government takes over and it is so suspicious and so hostile to the old government that programs that were started by that government, they truncate them and start their own new projects. And that is what makes us go 2 steps forward and 1 step backwards. And so one of the things we did was to continue the programs that the previous government had started and expand them, actually. So if you take every single one of the programs they started, we bettered it. We took the capitation grant. At the time we took it was 3 cedis. We increased it to 4 cedis, 50 pesos. We took the school feeding program. At the time we took it, there were barely less than 500,000 children on the school feeding program. Today we have more than 1 million children being fed in schools in Ghana. We took the Metro Mass Transit. They had about 500 buses. Today we have more than 1,000 buses, providing public transport in various areas in Ghana. So we ensure the continuity of programs. But then, in addition, we also started our social intervention programs. And those included a free school uniforms program. We distributed 3 million school uniforms to children in deprived districts. We distributed 43 million exercise books over the last 3 years to children in schools. Because you go to some of the rural schools and the parents could not afford to buy exercise books for their children. So you go to the class, the teacher is teaching, but the child does not have an exercise book in which to write. And that's why we instituted the exercise books program and distributed 43 million of those exercise books across the country. You go to a lot of constituencies and children did not have classrooms to study in. They were studying under trees. And so we came up with the elimination of schools under trees program. And over the last 3 years, we built about 1,700 schools all over the country. And then the previous government had increased the SSS years to 4 years, but they had not made infrastructural provision for the increased number of students that were going to be in secondary school. And so there weren't sufficient dormitory blocks, there weren't sufficient classroom blocks, there weren't sufficient lecture halls and dining halls and all that. And so over the last 3 years, we have built almost 675, blocks, either classrooms. We look at the school and look at what the particular this thing is, and then we provide it. And so it has expanded the capacity for secondary school students. And so that's what we've been working on over the last 4 years. In the road sector, we have expanded the roads. Some of the roads we inherited from the previous government, they were big projects. And normally when you have big projects running into hundreds of millions of dollars, you don't put it on the national budget because of the competition for resources. When we came into office, there were at least 4, we call them the Gang of 4. There were 4 major road projects going on, all in millions of dollars that were sitting on the national budget. And so you had to make provision, for those projects. And as a result, the projects were going very slowly. So we had to raise a bond to finance those projects. And today, if you go to Ghana, you see that those projects are nearing completion. These are the Achimota of Angkor road that leads towards Kumasi. Then you had the, what do you call it, the Adenta from Medina, Legon, Adenta Barrier road. Yeah, then you also had the Ansawam to Apega road, and then in Kumasi you had the Soko line interchange. And so we took them off the normal budgetary process and raised the bond, and we're financing them out of that bond. So it's made those projects, most of them are 70-80% complete and should be finished in the next few months. There's a major project we're just starting, which is being financed by the China Development Bank credit. To mark 50 years of diplomatic relations between Ghana and China, our president visited China. And while he was there, together with the president of China, they negotiated the single biggest credit facility that China has ever given to any African country. And that's the China Development Bank facility. That facility is meant to be invested in infrastructure to take Ghana to the next level. I'm sure that sitting outside, you hear a lot of misinformation about it. It's a 3 billion facility to be invested in major infrastructure. We selected the infrastructure very carefully. These are projects that have a capacity to raise revenue to be able to pay off the credit over time. Okay. Now the repayment of this credit is 20 years. 1 billion of it is going into the gas pipeline infrastructure. We've discovered gas. As of now, we're not processing the gas, so we're not using the gas for anything. A pipeline has been laid to shallow water. We need to lay a pipeline to bring the gas onshore and put a gas processing plant to process the gas so that we can supply it to Abuadze to generate electricity for Ghana at a more affordable rate than using crude oil. And then also, we're setting up a petrochemical free zone where industries interested in the petrochemical industry will set up there and use the gas or use the oil for whatever processing that they have to do. And that, let me make a point before. The potential revenue from processing the gas alone, and supplying it for electricity and other purposes, can pay the whole of the $3 billion in 7 years. Wow. Can pay the whole of the $3 billion in 7 years. So I'm just telling you that it's not credit. A lot of people will say, oh, they're increasing Ghana's debt, as if you're just taking it and using it for frivolous activity. It's being invested very wisely, and it will give Ghana the capacity to be able to repay the credit. Another part of the credit is being used for the expansion of the Takrady port. With the new oil industry that has come, if you ever go to Takrady and you're flying back to Accra, when the plane takes off, just when it turns, just look to your left, you see the Takrady harbor, and just look at the queue of ships outside waiting to come into the port. And so we said, look, let's use another part of this money to expand the harbor so that we can reduce the waiting time of ships and let them come into the port. We're also dredging the port to make it deeper, because the new ships that come are heavier and go deeper into the water than the ships that used to come at the time Takrady Port was built. So part of the money is going into dredging the port to make it deeper so that bigger ships can come into the port with more cargo. Another part of the money is being used to rehabilitate the Western Railway line from Takrady to Kumasi, so that instead of carrying bauxite and manganese by road and cocoa products to the port by road, we'll bring them by the railway line. Because since the railway line broke down, the road has been destroyed because of the heavy cargo that is being used. And so we're rehabilitating the railway so that we can use it to support the port. Because everywhere you have a port, railway is the best means of transport for feeding a port. Then we're building marine landing sites. In the last days before President Kufuor left office, he commissioned marine landing sites. and cut the sod. He cut the sod for marine landing sites. And so when we came, we thought it was a project that was going to go. And then we came and there was not a single CD for the marine landing sites. So we added them to the CDB projects. And so part of the money is going to be used for marine landing sites, in major towns along the coast. It's going to provide facilities for small boats and fishermen to be able to land their catch properly. There'll be cold stores at the sites so that they can preserve their catch and be able to improve their income. So all the major towns along the coast where you have major fishing activity are going to get marine landing sites. There's the Accra Intelligent Traffic Management System as part of it. Accra is getting congested because more people are able to afford cars, so the number of the cars on the road are more. We've expanded the roads as much as we can. We used to have single lane roads. Today, if you go to Accra, we have 3 lanes, we have 6 lanes. You cannot expand the roads any further. And so we have to use intelligence to manage the traffic system. So as part of that, we have the Accra Intelligent Management Traffic System, which would operate like you people have here in New York, where when the traffic is heavy in a certain direction, you are able to manipulate the traffic lights so that it makes one side go more faster than the standalone traffic lights. In Accra, what we've had is standalone traffic lights. It's like a robot. Once you set it green, red, yellow, green, it will continue. But this new system will allow the traffic lights to speak to each other. There will be a control center where there's a set camera, he can see that there's traffic, more traffic here. So if you let that traffic light allow more cars to flow than we currently have. It will also have a camera system to trap people who cross red lights.
Wow.
So that
Wow.
every good thing also has its, other side. So there'll be cameras that will catch people who jump the red lights. And there'll be a ticketing system. We'll give them tickets and raising revenue. Part of the money is being invested in what we call the Eastern Corridor Multimodal Project. We're going to build landing sites from Akosombo right through Pando, Amakwatonu to Ketekrachi, all the way to Wipe. And so there'll be ferry landing sites. We're going to put modern ferries on the Water Lake so that they can move people along the lake. The people who trade along the lake would have better service. It will reduce the number of accidents that we have on the Water Lake. And then, as part of it, it would also have road construction to communities along the lake. So that is part of the project. There's a bus terminal in Pumpuni. Ghana doesn't have enough capacity to store petroleum products. So we're setting up a new terminal at Pumpuni, which will help to increase the capacity of gas and fuel that we can store, so that these perennial shortages that we have sometimes will be a thing of the past. So that's another of the projects and the CDB. Indeed, there are 12 projects. I can't remember all off the top of my head, but all these are critical projects that will move Ghana to the next level. We have a very discerning electorate, and so when elections come, and just because people want to win elections, they start making all kinds of promises. What I ask is, just ask their track record, and I don't think that in Tree we have a proverb that the one you know already in the daytime, in the night you don't need a light to know that this is the person, when it comes to the North and the Muslim community, and it comes to elections, just look at the track record of the two parties in terms of the welfare of the Muslim community and the North. And difference is clear. Any progress that has been made by the North or the Muslim communities has been under an NDC government, either NDC 1 or NDC 2. If you talk about education, Islamic Education Unit, it's under Jerry Rawlings' government. If you talk about Muslim holidays, people thought it was impossible, we couldn't have holidays for Muslims in Ghana. We did it. It was under Jerry Rawlings' government.
And the national chief imam.
You know?
Yes.
And I mean, there are just so many things. I mean, organization of the Hajj, you know, it had become, if you went and saw the manner in which our fathers and mothers and brothers and sisters, you know, carried out the Hajj, you know, and the open sun where they used to sleep. It took somebody to say, no, let's have a Hajj village. Let's have a very conducive and comfortable place for them. And since then, the Hajj has been operated very successfully, and this year it will be operated successfully again. This year we're going to have 2 Hajj camps. There's going to be one in Accra, there's going to be one in Tamale. So all those carrying out the Hajj from the northern sector of the country will check in Tamale Airport. And those in the south will check in at the new Hajj camp. We are moving it from the Elwak place where it was. You heard that an aeroplane landed there, and Allah is great. I mean, if that happened when we were conducting the Hajj, the result would have been deadly, you know. But we always sense a signal, you know. We never knew that, you know, the planes could, you know, shoot over and end up in the Hajj village. So we're moving the Hajj village to the other side of the airport, and we've procured the site, and we're going to set up the tents there. But like I said, there'll be 2 Hajj villages, one in the north, one in the south. And so for those who check in the north, they'll do their immigration, their customs, everything there, their port health, and then we'll airlift them to Accra, and then they'll board their flight direct and go, so that they don't need to come. And President, when he was talking, talked about citizenship. Recently we held a conference of Muslim chiefs, Zongo chiefs, at the International Conference Center, their first ever conference. And I was privileged to speak there. For those who read my book, you will find out that my first degree was in history. And I studied extensively the history of Ghana, history of Africa, and the whole world. Zongos, okay, good. He's got a copy. Zongos are an integral part of Ghana's history. The Zongos came about as a result of the trans-Saharan slave trade. Muslim traders came to the south to buy gold, and when they came, they brought items from Asia and the Middle East, and they exchanged them with the traders in the forest zones for gold and other forest products, including cola nuts and other things. And they in turn took those to the Sahelian region and sold them to the Arabs to take across the Sahara. And so gradually, these traders settled outside the various urban communities where they were trading. Now, because they were Muslims, they settled on the outskirts of the town and built their mosque, so that in the morning when the muezzin is crying, you will not disturb the townspeople. That's how Zongos came about. So you go to every urban center in Ghana, and there's a Zongo there which has existed for hundreds of years before Ghana became independent. And so we have lived and coexisted in peace without any problems. Now, on 6th March 1957, when President Nkrumah declared independence, there was a declaration that everybody within the borders of Ghana at midnight 1957 was a Ghanaian. And so you can't look at a person and say, oh, because you are Kotokoli and Kotokolis are in Togo, you are not from Ghana. Because you are a Basari, and Basaris are in, some Basaris are in Togo. But if you take the borders of Ghana and look at all the tribes, there are some of the same tribes across the border outside. I'm a Gonja, but I have my relatives across the border in Bona, in Cote d'Ivoire. And so you could say that I'm not Ghanaian too. You know?
Right.
But we did a biometric registration exercise. And go and ask who challenged Zongo people that they are not citizens. Go and ask who challenged them. So when you talk about citizenship,
We know NDC.
when you talk about citizenship, you know who is questioning your citizenship. It's not me, it's not NDC. It's those who challenge people from the Zongos when they go to register and say they are not Ghanaian. They are the ones who are challenging citizenship. And you know who they are.
You know what to mention.
I'm not mentioning them.
We know.
You know. So that's why I said we should look at track record. I mean, people will come bearing gifts, and that's why they say beware of the Greeks, or is it the Trojans? Even when they come bearing gifts, you know, because you never know. So things are calm in Hohoi. The chief imam went there, you heard about it, and I followed up. And a lot of work has been done to try and, you know, bring peace to the people. I made that suggestion when I went to Hohoi, you know, and I said that we've lived together for a long time, and so I think that we should integrate the society. So where there's a sizable Zongo community, a representative of the Zongo community should be allowed to sit on the traditional council. I've seen areas where they have it. When the chief sits in state and he calls his chiefs, he calls the imam, and the imam comes and joins them, and they sit and, you know, talk. Or the second Zongo comes and joins them, and it creates a peaceful atmosphere to advance, you know, our peace and harmony. It won't harm it, you know. But when I said it, a few people abused me and, you know, said that I was advocating something strange, and that how could I advocate that settlers should be allowed to sit on traditional councils, you know. So I hope that, you know, it's something that people consider. So we've also been doing the SADA project to try and bridge the gap between the north and south of the country. As a result of the historical differences between the north and the south, you know, the north lagged behind in terms of development. And so we instituted a SADA. Government has given the seed money, and SADA has actually taken off. A lot of programs are going on. I'm constantly called to the Savannah zone to go and commission new projects. And the intention is that over the next 20 years, you know, we will create a situation where the economic opportunity in the northern Savannah zone is, if not equal, but as close to the south as possible. So that we don't have a situation where a lot of our young people, especially young girls, kayaye and things, are leaving the north because they can't find work and coming to be human porters in the south. Any country that does not balance its development cannot have sustainable development, because you can't have a country where economic opportunity exists in only one section, while the other place there's no economic opportunity. And for a country like Ghana, which is a unitary state, we're free to move wherever we want. And so where there's opportunity, people will move there. If you have all the businesses in Accra, Tema, and Sekondi Takrady, and Kumasi, then naturally people will drift to those places. And then what happens is you have sociological problems there. The utilities are stretched because more people are coming. You can't provide sufficient electricity and water and all that. And so you need to balance out development so that wherever your people are, they can find economic opportunity. Recently, we gave out some scholarships to study, and I was attacked again. You know, it was a medical scholarship that we arranged with the Cuban government. And this scholarship, when it was signed in Cuba, I announced that it was going to target deprived communities. I announced it in Cuba, and it was carried in the media. So when we came, I set up a committee to do the selection. And so one Number one criteria was to identify brilliant students from deprived communities who had passed but had not gained entry into Ghanaian universities, but who had done science, to be able to go and do medicine. Then the second criteria was that we should take students from areas where you have a high doctor-to-patient ratio. Now, if you go to the Upper East region, one doctor is to 38,000 people.
Fine.
And so naturally, what our intention was that we're going to take these children and send them to Cuba for training as doctors and bring them back to their communities to work as doctors. Because when you train the doctors in our universities and you post them to those areas, they don't want to go. So that was the intention. And then we also took children from the Zongo community, and I was targeting especially girls, you know, to go and train as doctors and possibly as gynecologists, so that our mothers will feel comfortable, you know, having their daughters. I came under criticism, you know, and they said that some names were more, you know, than others, you know. But it was to balance out, you know, the doctor-to-patient ratio and make sure that we have these young children going to parts of the country that are disadvantaged in terms of medical personnel. And a committee was set up, they were given the criteria, they did the selection, and they brought it, and the children, you know, have gone. And so these are some of the things we're doing to try and help deprived communities like in the north, the Zongos and things, to be able to also come up. And often it's misrepresented. So I just said I'll mention it so that you understand, you know, some of the criticisms that we are coming under. I think I've touched, you know, a lot, and I want to thank you very much. You are a very critical constituency, because even though you might not physically be home, your influence reaches very far at home. And so I think that when we visit and we meet you and discuss with you and explain to you what is going on at home, it gives you a better understanding of what's going on, so that when you talk to the folks at home, you know, you can influence or extend your influence to whatever, you know, they are thinking. So I bring you greetings, and I think I will end the talk here, so that if you have a few questions, we'll take them. Thank you very much.